Indiana's hat tips to Casablanca, Pam Grier, Shakespeare, and Willy Wonka. Dolomites in charge, Tom Popo's a go. Lightsabers clash in the Thunderdome. This miscellaneous film festival, where every movie's incredible. You never know what to expect. This film festival's the best. This film festival's the best.
Welcome to the podcast where we find films with curious connections and combine them into a miscellaneous film festival. I'm Jacin.
And I'm Dustin.
And this is part one of our Shakespeare mini film festival. How you doing, Dustin?
I'm doing great. I watched 2 new movies, have a lot to talk about. We have a shared favorite already with the first one.
Oh, yeah.
This will be awesome.
Our inspiration for talking about Shakespeare was also a mutual love of the Bard and his fantastic work. I grew up being kind of a theater kid and have been in a few Shakespeare plays. What about you, Dustin?
I've never done theater. I'm sure I would be terrible at it. If you count the one time in 8th grade where I was essentially coerced into doing it by the school, and it wasn't Shakespeare, it was just some crap. I was terrible. I was terrible. I'm definitely someone that should be kept behind any camera that in the world. But
I absolutely agree. You have a face for radio.
but no. And in high school I didn't get it. We were told that Shakespeare's amazing. We were forced to read Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet. There's parts of each that I liked, but I didn't have a real taste for it at the time. I kind of reapproached him through a combination of film and just philosophy. There's enough people that I follow that are still with us today that will mention Shakespeare. And there's also been great films. I think the first really good Shakespeare film that I watched was Chimes at Midnight, which is not really a Shakespeare play, right? Like it's this weirdo amalgamation that Orson Welles did. But also the Henry V adaptation by Kenneth Branagh. And it's a super powerhouse performance. We're actually not talking about that movie today, but that kind of reignited
a different
my
Kenneth Branagh film.
Yeah, and I also, there's René Girard, who has a great book on Shakespeare, and there's also what is his name? Bloom. And the whole idea of the Western canon, so much of it includes Shakespeare. So I started taking those works more seriously, after my kind of hard sci-fi phase of my teens. And
that was your transition?
That was my transition. Isaac Asimov to Shakespeare and literature, quote. But most of that stuff holds up super well. So mostly I'm someone who appreciates Shakespeare through reading the plays as literature and then watching film adaptations. I've actually never been to a real Shakespeare play, but I live in southern Washington, like a 5-hour drive, and I could be in Medford and go to the Shakespeare Festival this summer. So we'll see if I do that.
Oh, definitely. You should do it. I got exposed to Shakespeare the same way you did in high school, reading Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, all the big hits up front. At one point, I got to be Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is one of the films we're going to talk about. It is a lot of fun getting to speak those words and get immersed in that world. I find Shakespeare's poetry, Shakespeare's verse, immensely inspiring.
The level of wit and cleverness in Shakespeare is still underrated.
I totally recognize that it's not for everybody. A lot of it seems to make no sense. Seeing somebody breathe life into it and breathe intention into those words makes them that much clearer.
And it's too bad I don't actually have a good memory for that style of Old English. But, reading like H.P. Lovecraft when I was younger, and I still think that Lovecraft is awesome, you read it now and it seems a little alien because it's the very kind of old Victorian English, and Shakespeare's of course even older than that, but there's a natural exoticism to it now that we're centuries away from it. So I think that it's there's been talks about translating Shakespeare to modern English. I think that would be an abomination. We should not do that,
which is something we'll also be talking about in our next film in part 2, but in this part 1 we're discussing specifically Much Ado About Vagina from 1993. I'm so sorry. It was, in doing research for this, I had the most fun discovering that Elizabethans in their crass, misogynistic, patriarchal culture, would refer to women's genitalia as nothing or no thing, out of the crass idea that, oh, women have nothing down there.
If something's not hanging, it's not there.
Exactly. So that led to a fun little double entendre in the title of Much Ado About Nothing, as it implies that maybe this is going to be all about sex, maybe not. Nod, nod, wink, wink, say no more. And we were talking about Shakespeare directed by Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh, of course, is a big fan of William Shakespeare's work and made several movies, usually starring himself.
Yes. And his wife.
And his wife at the time, Emma Thompson, who is incredible. And if
Yes.
you want to talk about breathing life into Shakespeare's poetry, if you find Shakespeare obtuse, you can just sit back and listen and watch Emma Thompson perform Beatrice in
Yes.
Much Ado About Nothing against Kenneth Branagh's Benedict. And it is amazing. She makes all of those lines sound natural.
Yes.
And have real sincere motivation behind them. I believed everything she was saying and believed that people would sit around and talk and combat one another with poetic wit like this. And that really does it for me. That, I get Twitter-pated. I get Twitter-pated! It's so good.
No, she eviscerates people with her words. It's wonderful. She's so good in it, and it's so.
Oh, she does that in real life too. That's why she's perfect for this, because she is just that smart, that fast.
She really is. I love Emma Thompson. I'm really looking forward actually to seeing her version of Sense and Sensibility, because I haven't yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh,
I'm a Jane Austen fan, so I'm looking forward to that. And I think that her opposite of Kenneth in this movie, that must be peak marriage for them, because
I hope so, because I know how tough it can be doing an artistic endeavor or an expensive endeavor like making a movie. The idea that they were on the same page and were sort of celebrating their own love, their own creative expression, their own opportunity to get to do these famous characters. I know Romeo and Juliet probably takes the cake as the most famous of Shakespeare's lovers.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And then if you're really hardcore, the Macbeths, maybe second place. But for me, it's Beatrice and Benedict. That is exactly what I want to see from Shakespeare. That for me is relationship goals.
Yeah, and something that led to the creation of this particular episode is during our very first podcast, or at least my first podcast with you, I mentioned in the, kind of the pre-recording of that I loved Much Ado About Nothing, this particular adaptation. And that was the genesis of this whole episode. And the level of delivery, Denzel Washington's excellent in this movie.
Oh my goodness. And he had a long history of doing Shakespeare before this.
Yeah,
He
little
had done
appreciated.
it in college and done it in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and we'll get to talk about him more later on. But yeah, it's all of the performances in this are incredible. I think
all of them.
Well, Keanu Reeves is incredible for its own reason. That it's second only to Dracula.
Oh my goodness! I would say that he was better.
He's better in Dracula
as John what's he called in Dracula? John Harker.
I think it's Jonathan Harker.
Yeah, he was better in Dracula in this, but this was Dracula's much later. I actually took the time to delve into why Keanu Reeves was even in this.
Why was he cast? Yeah, and why did it happen again later?
You say it like it's a rhetorical question.
I know.
I have an answer for you.
Well, I heard for Dracula, they wanted Coppola wanted Johnny Depp, and the studio said no. We need someone prettier. And they hadn't seen this yet, because he is atrocious in this.
It's for a similar reason. He is very pretty. And when Kenneth Branagh was looking for backing to get money to do this, or to get a studio to help produce it, his selling point was, hey, during the opening credits, because it's a big celebration outdoors, everybody's going to take a shower before the movie gets started. The opening credits is just going to be a massive shower scene with the women over here and the men over there. So whoever I cast, potentially you're going to get to see their butt. And they were like, oh, who are you thinking? He's like, I'm thinking Keanu Reeves. And they went, oh, Keanu Reeves' butt.
They missed out on casting Jean-Claude Van Damme. That's all I can say.
What the hell?
Bloodsport
Does
had
he-
already
does-
come out. There's a great shot of Jean-Claude's ass in that movie.
I don't know. I think some asses have a line of credit that will extend over several films. I don't think it's one and done with a lot of asses.
You know what? Probably right. But
Maybe Mike Myers. Maybe Mike Myers is a one and done.
The Spy Who Shagged Me, yeah. He dances naked through the hotel lobby in the opening credits of that. It's wonderful.
I think that was all I need from Mike Myers. No offense to him. After watching the 1993 Much Ado About Nothing, I immediately switched over and watched the Catherine Tate and David Tennant stage version. That gave me some perspective. Seeing a different adaptation of it made me appreciate how Don John, the quote-unquote antagonist, he is the antagonist, but he's such a nebbishly minor character, relatively speaking.
He's like a
and everything else that
MacGuffin
happens.
of a villain.
A MacGuffin of a villain, you're right.
Yeah.
So casting Keanu Reeves in that, it seemed like a throwaway part, so they give it to the least talented actor. Watching a different version from actual stage actors, that character had so much life in it and so much motivation. You really felt his resentment of being overlooked. You felt that he had turned into a spiteful person who would almost reflexively do things that were mean and provocative to ruin other people's lives just to feel something for himself.
I think I like the Kenneth Branagh interpretation, which is he's kind of a throwaway villain. Like it even goes with the title of the play, Much Ado About Nothing. Like the whole thing is this kind of silly misunderstanding. So for me, it totally works in that context. I could imagine Shakespeare just having a laugh while he created that character. But who knows, right? We're 400 years removed from him at this point.
It's true. I would say with Keanu Reeves, it's kind of the John Wick rule that when Keanu Reeves is talking, less is more.
Yes. And
so of all the things they trimmed out of this, they could have trimmed down Don John's part.
Well, and thankfully he does not have a dominant role through most of the movie. It feels like he's written out like less than halfway in, and then he kind of just returns at the end as like the guy being arrested, right? And I find that to be funny in and of itself, because really the meat of the movie is the incredibly funny dialogue and the back and forth between Benedict and Beatrice.
And that was my other criticism for the movie, and of course the play. They're one and the same, so you can talk about them equally. Is between Beatrice and Benedict, that is so hilarious,
yes,
and so deliciously beautiful. They command both the comedy and the romantic drive, the romantic motivations of the movie itself. They are the heart of it. There's no need for comic relief. There's almost no need for an antagonist. Like they could have somehow been the cause of their own antagonism and it spilled over into Hero and Claudio. But then we have Dogberry, who is the neighborhood guard or whoever. In the stage version I saw, they were really playing that character up, playing it to the nines, but nowhere as over the top as Michael Keaton.
He is so great in this.
Michael Keaton sinks his teeth deep into that.
Yes.
And you see,
it looks like every line delivery he has is hilarious. And
at the same time, like coughing and sniffling
yes.
and acting like a mangy mutt at the same time.
He could fit in with Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse. It'd be a perfect pairing of two men, actually. Like he totally has all those mannerisms.
If you just actually get both of them to play those characters and do Waiting for Godot.
Yes.
And it would just be the most ferocious, like dog eat dog version of Beckett you've ever seen.
And the entire, I love that, and Shakespeare likes to do this, I think. There's the false accusation plot device. We also see that in Othello, which we'll be talking about soon. But, the false accusation of, I saw your love, making out with another man, and therefore, the marriage is off. And that's really the entire, like, dramatic core of the movie, right? Like it's the actual problem to be solved. And then they come up with the absurdly amazing idea, let's just act like she killed herself so that we can get to the bottom of this and then reveal her at the end. It's great.
I want to explain that scene. If you haven't seen this, you don't know this play. Go watch it now. It's terrific. You'll love it. It's amazing. A group of soldiers come to this country villa, and the people of the country villa are so happy to see the soldiers returning home that they throw a big party. And it turns out one of the young soldiers, Claudio, has been in love with the owner of the villa's daughter. Her name is Hero. They get together, and before the party even starts, like, hey, you guys are in love. What's going to happen? They're like, we love each other very much. We want to get married. And like, oh, this is amazing. In the meantime, Don John, the sniveling Keanu Reeves emo character, decides the only thing that'll make him happy is ruining things. So he tricks everyone into thinking that Hero has been sleeping with somebody else and is not fit for marriage to Claudio. Claudio finds out, and instead of saying, okay, the wedding's off, like an asshole, he says, I'm going to go to the wedding.
And then wreck it.
And then wreck it there. And at the wedding, as they're saying their vows, Claudio turns to Hero and basically calls her all the worst things. And worse than, because this soldier who serves under the prince, Denzel Washington's character, because of his station, because he's launching these attacks against Hero, Hero's father, Leonardo, just immediately buys in, and then it further attacks his daughter,
right,
saying how she has brought shame to the house, etc., etc.
Yeah, there's an incredibly there's an incredible lack of evidence. It's clear that he wants us to be on her side and sympathetic to her, because we as the audience know that it's all like staged by Don John, right? Like, so
right.
He's actually really wanting us to feel sympathy. And I find this with Shakespeare actually writ large through most of his writing, at least past the point of like the 1590s, like starting in that era. His female characters are some of the best female characters in all of fiction, I think. And I think he's maybe like, I think he's a contender for greatest thinker of all time, like so far in human history. Like, there's philosophers like Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, but Shakespeare, I think, has such a deep understanding of human nature and motivations. So if you were to call him like a great economist or a great philosopher, I think it would actually like undermine how great he is. I think he defies categorization in the way that we do things nowadays. Like, I find him quite progressive for the standards of his time, quite a bit.
The point where I would agree with you more so is in his critique of the relationships between men and women. Specifically with, like, this is being an extreme case where Claudio is overreacting in such an awful way, and the prince just goes along with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they both have been deceived by Don John. But also between Benedict and Beatrice's characters, as they are each espousing the faults of the other gender.
Yes.
What I found to be the core of Much Ado About Nothing was Balthazar's song, which is all about the inconsistency of men, and that young women need to be cleverer and not fall for inconsistent men who are just going to come and go and feign love and then fuck off. There is contention between Benedict and Beatrice, but that Beatrice has had some reserved love for Benedict, and Benedict goes on this tirade about bachelorhood and how no woman's really ever going to be good enough for him. And then, you know, the moment somebody says, hey, Beatrice actually secretly really loves you, and he just turns on a dime, shows that he was the character that needed to change.
Yes. Yeah.
People might come to this as they're both contentious characters. Like, yeah, but one's coming from a place of misogyny and resentment, and Beatrice has been a loving, kind, witty, smart character who is guarding her heart.
Yeah. And, you know, I do think that there's a lot more self-deception, I think, is something that Benedict has. I think self-deception is actually like rampant through Shakespeare. And we'll totally get into that because the plays that we're talking about escalate as we go on. But self-deception is everywhere in these plays. I think that's a giant part of human nature that fiction is probably best at talking about, actually, because we can kind of abstract it to, you know, other people instead of having to examine ourselves. But with Beatrice, I actually think she's quite honest. I think she has a bit of self-deception too, but her self-deception is more of a guardedness, I think, whereas Benedict's, I think, is a little bit different. I think he is too much of an idealist. Now they both talk like that, right? Like they both have these kind of perfect form, people that they're after in their dialogue.
The self-deception of saying, well, of course I'm open to anybody.
They just need to be perfect.
They fit, they fit this very narrow criteria, because why would I ask for someone who doesn't suit me?
Right. Yeah. And that's some of the funniest moments of the play, especially when, if we're not talking about the Claudio and Hero relationship, the shenanigans that happens to kind of get the paths of Benedict and Beatrice to cross. That's just expert level trolling that Shakespeare's having fun with. Denzel and his whole crew, and is it Leopold? Is that Hero's father's name? Leonato. And they have those scenes at the fountain where they're essentially talking out loud so that Benedict thinks that Beatrice actually loves him. That's just incredible. And Kenneth Branagh plays that pitch perfect. There's almost a slapstick quality to this movie, but it never jumps the shark. All of the scenarios in this are so absurd. More so today than in his time, right? Because our values have changed.
I mean, absurd, to us, but I think that he wrote two great scenes that have characters other than Benedict and Beatrice speaking for them, like telling the secret that the other person's overhearing, which on stage is a great setup to have two characters having the secret, quote unquote, secret dialogue on one side of the stage, and then the other person who, because of staging, we suspend our disbelief that they're hiding, but watching their reaction, giving an actor a chance to have no lines and just react to the discovery of the truth that someone else loves them, and see the roller coaster they can go on, and their physicalities, their humorous physicalities to hearing this, is such a great template for different performers to interpret.
Absolutely. And I think that slapstick disarms an audience, so it makes them more open as well. At least comedy does that for me all the time, right? And I'm willing to accept more things if I'm having a good time and laughing. And Shakespeare clearly was a good comedian, a comic writer. And, there's so much embedded in this. And I think that there's also a little lesson about, in all this goofiness, you'll actually will find love in these kind of unexpected places.
If you just open yourself up to it. If you're not too much of a smartass.
If you're not so serious.
I mean, that's why I'm single.
The character that I find the most joyous in this movie, just as a character, is actually the one played by Brian Blessed, because he's just acting like Brian Blessed, and he's just bumbling around, just having fun. And it's like, yes, exactly. Like, he's the most lovable character as far as like he doesn't have a huge part or anything. He's in a lot of scenes, but he doesn't have like some major role. But he actually is kind of ideal in many ways. Like, he's just this bumbling guy that has fun, and he's also the one that's clearly happiest. So I think that there's a little bit of a nod there from Shakespeare, actually.
I think that's a great final thought. I think you should live your life as joyful and full of life and happy as a bouncing Brian Blessed. And like David Bowie wrote, learn to love and be loved in return.
Yes.
Thank you all for listening to our mini Shakespeare Film Festival. My name's Jacin.
And I'm Dustin.
And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Love's not a play, it's more like lust. But I crave words that tear my heart. Lines so sharp, set worlds apart. I wanna love like Shakespeare, wild and raw. So high, I can't wait to fall. Let's lose this script, no stage to fake. I wanna love like Shakespeare, yeah.
sky.